Coogs house. I don't know if you've heard, but there's like this big thing going on campus this Saturday between like us and Alabama and some round orange bouncy balls that are happening in the Fertitta Center. Have you heard about that yet? Oh, you have.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater came to stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe. That way you can get the podcast in your newsfeed each day. You get podcast in your feed each day, you can make it your first listen of the day. So make sure you hit subscribe down below and you'll get the latest on the Cougs all year long. Welcome back to YouTube. Good to see you again. We're still getting used to this. I think we're wrapping up the third or fourth week of this. Anyway. Hard to count based on when you kind of started, but it's good to see you again. Remember, when we hit 250 subscribers, we're going to give a Marcus Sasser t-shirt away to someone who's been commenting. So continue to comment, continue to give me your thoughts, continue to subscribe so we can get up to 250 subscribers. Last I saw, we're like around 140, so we're well over halfway there. Keep it rolling. If you got nothing to say about the Houston and Alabama basketball game coming up this weekend, A, why not? But B, my suggestion would be, do you like chicken salad or egg salad? Tell me that in the comments below. All right, so today's episode, it is all going to be me solo talking about Alabama and Houston in the Fertitta Center this weekend. I will also point out that today, this is all me all the time. Tomorrow, we're going to bring on Locked On Bama's Luke is a host of Locked On Bama. He's going to come on and tell us all about their season and their guys and their perspective. Get a little behind enemy lines look at the Crimson Tide. We were going to have Ryan Monceau on. Total, I'll own this one, mistake kind of moment. He'll be on later in a bonus episode this week, if not a full-length episode next week. We're still working that out. He didn't really communicate how much time I need him for, that kind of thing. That's a me thing. But we'll have him on. He's all in charge of Houston NIL and that kind of stuff. Be a fun episode when we get it cracking and happening. Today's episode, again, all me telling you about my thoughts on Alabama. I watched the condensed game version, meaning they took out like dead balls and like told us what happened in free throws and kept the thing moving pretty quickly. The Alabama and North Carolina game went to 4 overtimes, and the Alabama and UConn game. Alabama played 3 top-end teams over the course of Thanksgiving week, and so lots of basketball to watch and see them play high-level basketball. The first segment here is me talking about the Alabama offense and what I noticed, what I think Houston can take advantage of. The second segment is going to be me talking about the Alabama defense and what I noticed and think Houston can take advantage of. And then the third segment is going to be looking at some particular matchups that I also think Houston can take advantage of. Are you catching some sort of a theme here? Anyway, in this first segment, let's talk a little bit about the Alabama offense. Now, I think it's worth pointing out that they are scoring a lot of points across the board. Even in their lone loss, they scored 67 points. The lowest point total on the year for them is 65 against South Alabama. It was on the road for whatever that's worth. Not a huge trek, but right. They're scoring a lot of points this season against some top-end teams as well. They hung 81 on Michigan State. That 67 was in a loss against Connecticut. And then against, again, I guess it was quadruple overtime, they scored 103 points against North Carolina. And I think we think of quadruple overtime and like how much time that is. But truthfully, like defenses got fairly stagnant. Guys were fouling out, so you had to go kind of deep into your bench. They scored a lot of those points, 77 of which, I guess, in regulation. It's still a high-scoring game is what I'm getting at, right? And so on offense, I think it all starts with number 1, the point guard, Mark Sears. I imagine he draws the Jamal Shead matchup we'll talk about later, but he is a driving kick guy. He is a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. In the UNC game, he actually hit 4 catch-and-shoot threes in the first half, just from like floating around the three-point line and catching other guys kicking out to him. And then if he's not open, he will drive and kick it back to someone else. The big thing, we're going to talk about this big guy, Bediako. He's a 7-footer, 6'11" and change kind of guy, big man sophomore for them, long arms. He's a lob threat and a high-energy guy. I would think I would take our big man, Jaywan Roberts, over him, but think the same kind of role for them. Doesn't quite get the ball to score as often, but certainly the same high energy motor guy. But the most impressive thing is this young freshman they got. All of their offense goes through this freshman named Brandon Miller, who's a 6'9", looking at his height and weight right now, 6'9", 200 pounds, big, strong kid, and a true three-level scorer, a true three-point threat, a true drive threat, and a true 2-pound pull-up kind of threat, right? What I thought was interesting was they ran it'd be like Houston if we ran all of our sets, all of our organized basketball for Jarace Walker. It's that kind of stuff, right? A lot of floppy stuff to get him in the short corner on the baseline, coming off of screens. In a zone look, they'll go to a high-low and kind of put him at the nail, and then as the ball goes to wing, he'll pop out from the nail to the three-point line and be able to hit a three there or put the ball on the ground, right? They ran some like backside action with Sears dribbling, Marcus Sears, the Mark Sears, the guy dribbling the ball around I was talking about. They'll run him on like the left side of the floor and have a pin down or a hammer screen either way for Miller on the backside. In total, it looked like they don't have Brandon Miller bring the ball up because they want him to catch it in a true triple threat option where he can catch, shoot, and dribble. So he's always catching it kind of in that scoring, like within 25-ish feet of the basket. He's not going to be a guy bringing the ball up. Not that we would let Jarace either. We got tremendous point guard play. We got like 5 deep at that position, right? But I do think that like I would trust Jarace to do it in a way that they don't seem to trust Brandon Miller to do that. The thing that a lot of success with against UConn in the early parts of the game where they run him in what I call an empty side pick and roll. So they'd send like an overload to the right side, and then basically on the pick and roll, either as the ball handler attacking the elbow with the screen rolling to the short corner, near side short corner, or with him being the screener and Mark Sears attacking the elbow with him as the roller to the near side short corner. They're clearing outside of the floor to kind of create a fast-paced ISO either off the bounce or off the catch there. He can do a lot of things when he gets the ball in his hands. I don't think any one guy stops him. But I do think it's the kind of thing he's scoring 19.5 points per game. I think that's the most updated number I'm seeing. I think that it's the kind of thing where if you can kind of slow him down, you slow them down a whole lot. It's a shame he's not like a 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" even point guard, because I would trust Jamal Shead to do a lot of things, but he's going to shoot over the top of Jamal Shead. So I imagine get the matchups part, that's going to be a different matchup later. But he is a tremendous, he's a one and done for sure. Sticks off the floor. You'll notice him. He's not like skinny, but he's a thin built basketball player. Again, 6'9". I'd imagine his wingspan's in the positive range. Big, strong, long kid. One thing to point out, and one thing I think Houston can take advantage of is A, they seem to go through that one kid a lot. And B, they had 19 turnovers against UConn, admittedly in 4 overtimes. They had 21 turnovers against North Carolina, and then they had 10 against Michigan State, and obviously that's the game that they won by the biggest margin of those big 3 games they've had. That is to say that they will give you the basketball, and I trust our guard play, Shead, Sasser, Arsenault, Tremont, Ramon Walker's back and looking good, right? I trust our guard play to force them into more turnovers, not to mention the amount of shot clocks and stuff when they're going to run these more traditional sets that we saw Houston put St. Mary's through just last weekend. I think Houston forces them into a 20-ish turnover game. And frankly, I think the path to victory is like, can you get them like to 25, right? Obviously frustrating a freshman like Brandon Miller. It's going to be the Fertitta Center, so be loud, folks. But that could be a big moment too. But I think being able to force them to turn the ball over is going to be huge, because they clearly have demonstrated even in wins, they'll cough it up and give you extra possessions. And Houston takes advantage of those like no other team in America. Every analytical stat you look out there, Houston is running away with college basketball as far as forcing turnovers of either shot clocks, offensive fouls, or straight up steals, and running their way very, very quickly and getting points in transition. So I think that's going to be a key thing for the Houston Cougars this Saturday. But if you're looking for key things for you and yours this weekend or any day, let me recommend looking at LinkedIn.com. Now, LinkedIn.com is the place to find potential new hires for your small business, because every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager. You want to be 100% certain you have to access the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Start spreading the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it really easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs lets you find the qualified candidates faster that you want to talk to. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, in looking at the things that Houston's offense can take advantage of the Alabama defense, I think, first of all, I'm happy we're not playing football because I have a lot more questions about Houston's offense versus the Alabama defense in football. But I do think that Alabama's defense offers this length that if it weren't for the St. Mary's game, I'd have a lot more worry about, because while Houston did eventually stretch the lead and get away from Oregon a couple weeks ago, N'Faly Dante did offer some problems down low. But in watching Houston beat St. Mary's, I think the deal will be is being cognizant of the size. I told you on Monday, I thought it was interesting that Houston beat the size of St. Mary's by going to a true high-low look with Reggie Chaney and J1 Roberts. As I look at the Alabama defense, I wonder if this is the game we finally see the big lineup I've been asking for, right? If this is the game, I'll drop my pen. If this is the game that we finally see Jarace Walker at the 3 and some combination of Reggie Chaney, J1 Roberts, and or JVA Francis at those, some combination of the two of those three guys at the other two big man spots. J1 Roberts would probably be my pick at the 4, and then insert your guy at the 5. I say that because their defense relies on length at the rim and kind of wants to funnel you to the rim. And with our length, I would trust Jarace Walker on the drive to finish over and dunk on top of several of these guys. And I'll play with my brim there for a second because I'm like pulling it down, like get the Jay-Z look. Like I am into that for sure. I think that that's a big advantage for Houston. But also, we've seen on back cuts, whether it's Jamal Shead driving, Marcus Sasser has really good back and forth in the St. Mary's game just last weekend with J1. Houston is really, really good at that drop off to the big at the low block. If the post is opposite block of where you're driving, their guards and Jarace, because I guess technically he's not a guard, are really good at dropping that ball off either low or high to that guy. He's got traditionally, I think J1 and Reggie Chaney and JV are very good at this, but traditionally you worry about that because it's hard for a big man to catch ball put in the wrong spot. And our guys have great hands and we're putting the ball in great places. I think that's going to be a way to take advantage of these guys after watching them play St. Mary's last week. I think that what's interesting too is that you can see a lot of their film, they're not defending out past 24 feet. Caleb Love, North Carolina lost in quadruple overtime. Caleb Love had a lot of success against these guys in ways that I see Marcus Sasser having it as well, because they kind of keep their defense in like a packed in inside of 23, 24 feet. And Caleb Love, much like Marcus Sasser, I'm maybe speaking too fast. He's the North Carolina equivalent to Marcus Sasser. They're scoring point guard-ish kind of guy, right? I think Marcus is better, but don't tell Isaac from Locked On College Basketball that. I think that them sitting in the Alabama defense sitting inside of 23-ish feet will help Sass, because we've seen him start at 23 feet, take 2 bounces, step back, and hit one from 25, right? Like he can create separation out of that area, and if he's hitting, this could be a good night for the Cougs, or good afternoon for the Cougs, really, really fast. The other thing I'll say is that that's going to benefit kickouts to guys like Tremont Mark and Terrence Arsenal off the bench, because the defense starting at 23 feet as it collapses on drives, and I'm fairly confident our guards can get in the lane off the bounce because they're funneling, and our guards are really, really good at dribbling the basketball. The defense from 23 feet is going to collapse farther, and then suddenly that kick out, Arsenal's got a quick trigger. Tremont Mark's got a quick trigger. If Sasser's the one catching and shooting, he's got a really quick trigger. All of a sudden, those shots are going up really quickly. If Houston shoots the 3 ball well, like 36, 37% well, I think they win this one by double digits. I know Alabama's top 10 nationally. AP polls are great. I think so because we're number 1 in it. I think it's that kind of game, right? If Houston can shoot the ball well and they're at home, crowd should be into it. Energy should be high. I didn't see anything to say this, so I maybe just quote. I imagine they wear like the throwback jersey, right? Like I think this should be the kind of game that they do that. The other thing I'll point out is that admittedly it was in quadruple overtime, although Baycock didn't get to play because of foul trouble. Anyway, throughout some parts of the second half there, North Carolina was able to really kill these guys in the offensive glass. And I wonder if, okay, Baycock has a lot of like people jumping up and down and because of stuff at the end, like tournament stuff last season with him. J1 Roberts is a much better athlete than Baycock from North Carolina. And if Baycock can kill the offensive glass, I'm trusting J1 to go get the ball a bunch, right? I mentioned JVA Francis getting to play more this game. I think offensively, the deal is if they're going to rely on their big man, Charles Bodiaco, to be like kind of a floater in the lane, that's going to open up. Like, we don't want JVA dribbling, but he doesn't have to if his man is constantly come over to help. So I think that's kind of some of the things I think Houston can take advantage of. The interesting thing to me was, and the thing that I don't think they'll do against Houston, because it would be dumb, and they've got a good coach. Nate Oates was like SEC Coach of the Year in 2021, I think. I'm sure Luke will tell us more about that tomorrow, but I think he was Coach of the Year in 2021. It might have been 22. I guess that was just last season. Anyway, they got a good coach. They were playing drop coverage against Caleb Love on screens. And what that means is that if I'm the big man, if I'm the 5, and my guy's going way out there beyond the 3-point line instead of screen, I'm going to hedge off at about 10 or so feet away and make sure I can kind of play both and kind of have my hands up and be big. That way, when the roll comes, I can tag the roll. If the ball comes faster, I can go get the ball, right? And I'm giving, theoretically, my time to my defender to get over the screen. The deal in the drop coverage against a guy like Sasser is he shoots the ball pretty well off the dribble. So if you're that far off of these screens, he's just going to pull up off the dribble with separation from the screen. You're 10 feet away in the drop. He's going to pull up for 3. And I just don't think they do that against Houston. I know they did that to Caleb Love. He did other ways to score. That's why I think Sasser's a pretty good day. They did that to UConn and Michigan State as well. And they didn't ever get out of it against UConn, even though they lost that game, which was interesting. I just don't think they do that to Sass. And so I'm not going to like dive too deep in how to take advantage of that because A, it's fairly simple. Kelvin Sampson's a very good coach. You didn't have to have me tell him that. But B, I just don't think they do that to Houston. I don't think that would be smart. And so I just don't think that's what's going to come. I think it's interesting, though, that UConn, of those big 3 games over Thanksgiving, UConn won. North Carolina didn't. Michigan State didn't. And they won by attacking off those screens, not pulling up for 3 off those screens like I think Sasser can, but attacking Bediako off those screens and forcing him to make decisions, getting him in a little bit of foul trouble, bluntly, and getting into his chest and making him uncomfortable. Wearing him out defensively then meant he didn't have that energy on the offense side that we talked about at the top segment, right? Because Houston is deep, because they got a lot of good guards, and because, frankly, we've seen Sampson push the envelope on like seeing what kind of foul troubles guys can get into. I wonder if that's also what Houston does, right? If Houston sees that formula, we know from Sampson's pressers thus far that he has a lot of respect for UConn as a top team in the country. I'm sure he has watched that film for sure, right? And I wonder if that's the kind of thing that we see him get after it a little bit with Bediako. And frankly, it could really, really mess with what they're doing there in Tuscaloosa. I say they're in Tuscaloosa. They're bringing it to our house, but I think that's one thing they could do here. The last note on here that if they do this poorly against Houston that they did against North Carolina, this game could be over fast, is they were really bad in transition defense. And not that they were really bad, like they made bad decisions. They were bad in the fact that they were slow. Houston's super fast. And I know that we like get used to it because we see it twice a week, every week for what has Sampson been here 9 years now. Like we've seen a lot of this happen. But they were really, really slow in getting back. And they were, frankly, frequently outnumbered at getting back against both North Carolina and UConn in transition defense. And that's just not going to work against Houston. If it turns into a track meet, we got better track stars. And I think that bluntly would be really, really nice. Speaking of really, really nice, it'd be nice to win some money in the holiday season. So let's talk about how to get it. And probably the way I would not typically advise a student of mine to get it, but what's the way I'm going to advise of people to get it? That's betonline.net. Now, betonline.net is your number one source for betting info, stats, news, analysis. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from football to basketball. You can get soccer, esports. They got it all at betonline.net. They're the fastest, easy way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. So this weekend, the Houston Texans head to play the Dallas Cowboys, just up I-45. They've got the spread at 16.5. I got to be honest, I have not seen a 16.5 point NFL spread in a long, long time. They also have the over-under set at 45.5, and I'm sure that's because they see Houston bringing back Davis Mills. That appears to be a way that it looks like we may be tanking, throwing in the towel. They also see how tremendous the Dallas Cowboys defense is, and Dak has a pair of great running backs, and they've been rolling, and blah, 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 blah. But that spread is just huge. For reference, the spread a couple weeks from now, they only have the Kansas City Chiefs as a 14-point favorite against the Houston Texans on December 18th. So for December 11th, playing the Dallas Cowboys, 16.5 for, I guess it's a road game, but it's just up the road. I'm thinking I might pick Dallas and a pick 'em, but I'm thinking Houston can beat that point spread. And so I'm telling you that's kind of the cheeky play here is they'll beat Dallas will beat Houston, but by 17 points, let's think of it as this almost more akin to a neutral site game. Let's say it's a 14-point game. You win money. Listen to me. Make money. Go win money at betonline.net. All right. So now that you've won some money, let's talk about the matchups here as we see them. I told you at the top, and I started to hint at it, and I pulled myself back, but Mark Sears and his scoring threat versus Jamal Shead, Marcus Sasser, Jamal Shead, and his defensive prowess is going to be a great matchup. Sears is their second highest scorer. He's a traditionally built point guard. We've seen what Shead does to guards across college basketball every game this season, right? We opened up the season with he saw a couple different guys score 20 plus points per game last year. He kept them both in the single digits. With Mark Sears, if he can keep him frustrated and keep him from getting going, that can really put what's the old Peanuts thing where they put the stick in the spokes, the bicycle, that could be the kind of thing you see happening here. Sears, again, being their second highest scorer, shoots the ball very, very well inside the arc on, frankly, more attempts on his stat sheet than I realized in watching 2 games of his. He's also shooting the ball from beyond the arc pretty well. I mentioned in the North Carolina game, he had 4 catch and shoot threes in the first half. So I guess that could be throwing off his numbers. He had a big game in the game, went to quadruple overtime, got a lot of shots up. So that might be throwing the number off a little bit because we're still so early in the season that one big outlier can. But on the whole, I trust Jamal Shead to lock that one down. Okay. The other guard I see matching up here, if I'm looking at where their stuff kind of comes from, is I believe, and I'm sure my buddy tomorrow will correct me on how to pronounce this, but Nimari Burnett, I think that's how we pronounce that. I'm sure we'll get told that tomorrow. He's the guy I imagine that draws the Sasser matchup. He's more of a 6'5", and he's getting only about 8 points a game as opposed to the 15 that Sears is. And I think the deal for Sasser there will be that becomes more of a, you don't have to play a whole lot of help side defense. He's not quite the same kind of shooter. They don't even trust him to shoot the ball quite as often. And so he doesn't get as many shots up. And so I think that Sasser can kind of be a help side floater there to help some of the other stuff. And frankly, that could be a kind of role where you see Sasser get a lot of steals, or B, the kind of role where you see Sasser excel in offense because his defensive job is not as taxing, right? I mentioned Bediako. I imagine that's a J1 Roberts when he's in the game in the starting group. If it's not him, it's JVA or probably Reggie Chaney. Noah Clowney will probably also draw some J1. Noah Clowney, sorry, one second. Noah Clowney is a 6'10", listed as a forward. I could see him getting Tremont Mark, not because Tremont Mark can initially match up with his size, but more so because Noah Clowney can kind of get pushed around a little bit more than Brandon Miller can. And so I guess that leads me to the biggest matchup, I think, of this game. It's Houston's 5-star freshman Jarace Walker against Brandon Miller, the 5-star caliber kid at Alabama. I am obviously going to favor Jarace because defense carries over no matter how Jarace is shooting. And B, we saw flashes of Jarace kind of having more of a offensive role in the North Florida game. I know that people will say that North Florida is just North Florida, but I do think that the intention was there to get him more involved in actions, and I think that's intriguing and it's a good thing to see. I wonder, frankly, that's the kind of matchup to me where we could look in the newspaper on Sunday morning and see like Brandon Miller has more points, but we're also around watching like, yeah, but Jarace made the plays, right? That's what I can see happening here is like Brandon Miller, because he's the focal point of their offense, going to get a lot more shots up. He's currently shooting 15 shots a game, right? Averaging 19.5 points or so, right? And I think that's the kind of game where like Jarace Walker might not get 20 points like Brandon Miller does, but Jarace Walker might make the impactful winning plays, right? Kelvin Sampson always talks about like, how do you impact winning? And Jarace Walker might, yes, Brandon Miller gets 15 shots, but the last 3 of them were crazy heavily contested, and that's Jarace Walker making plays, right? So that's kind of where I see that matchup going. Obviously, if you listen to the show, you know I'm a big fan of Jarace, and so I'm sure I'm going to get called with homerism, bias kind of stuff in the comments, but Jarace is a top 10 pick, and I'm trusting Jarace in that matchup. The one that I think that Houston runs away with this in, though, is bench depth. They do go like 8 deep with double-digit-ish minutes across their roster. However, some of that's because they've got these inflated blowouts from before the Thanksgiving tournament. You're watching those, and then you have the quadruple overtime game, which we're still early enough in the season that kind of is somewhat of an outlier. I will say they bring Rylan Griffin in off the bench. He's a strong freshman guard from Dallas up the road. Richardson, he was on the same team as Cason Wallace. That's a really good high school team, state of Texas. They ran Texas high school basketball. I will say that while that was a really good, Rylan Griffin's really good. Terrence Arsenault, they know each other pretty well from Texas high school basketball, battlegrounds of sorts growing up in Texas. And Arsenault had the better of him in high school. And I think that Arsenault is not, because Arsenault is not the only scoring guard threat off the bench, whether it's Manuel Sharp coming in a couple quick threes or what have you, I think that Houston's got the edge of the bench depth as well, even as good a scorer as a guy like Rylan Griffin or Jaden Bradley can be. I think I'm going to trust Houston's bench depth there, because Houston's bench depth will include Reggie Chaney, right? Big monster on the glass, that kind of stuff, right? It'll include GVA Francis, long, athletic, shot blocking, shot deflecting. We've seen him get a double-double in 12 minutes, right? Like that kind of a guy coming off the bench for Houston. Ramon Walker is coming back healthy. He was healthy against North Florida. It's great to see him running around, and I really am excited to see the kind of impact winning plays he makes defensively in this game. Frankly, part of me says, like, put him on Brandon Miller and let him get a couple of his fouls, just driving that guy crazy, right? I think that's the kind of thing that could happen out of that, and I'm really, really excited to see him play. Tell me who you're excited to see play. Find me on Twitter and social media and all those kinds of things at Painsworth512. It's PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all your various social media handles. I'll be happy to talk all things Cougs, getting ready for a fun game this weekend against Alabama. So make sure you find me there. I'll also talk Rockets, Astros. I begrudgingly talk about the Texans. I do think that they can keep the Dallas game close to 17 points, though. I do think that. I talk sneakers. I make college football jokes sometimes that people don't like, but find me on Painsworth512 to talk all things, whatever you can talk about on Twitter. Thank you so much for subscribing to the show, listening to the show, and making the show your first listen of the day. We're here each and every day, so make sure you come check us out and make Locked On Cougs first listen today. If you're looking for a second listen today, I'm going to recommend Locked On Bama, not because I want to, encourage too much Alabama love, but I will say we're going to be talking to Luke tomorrow. They got a couple hosts already that do a great job, so make sure you check out who Luke is, and we'll talk to him more tomorrow. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. Again, Locked On Cougs, the primary Locked On Podcast Network, your team, in our case, the number one team, every day. Go Cougs.